Part 1. Have you ever wondered how a kingdom that had survived for centuries came within a single step of complete destruction? It wasn't an empire that invaded England. It wasn't a massive nation with endless armies. It was a group of warriors from the cold coasts of Scandinavia. They arrived in long wooden ships, carrying axes, shields, and an ambition far greater than anyone could imagine. At first, they came only to steal. Soon, they came to conquer. Within a few decades, they would destroy kingdoms, kill kings, and force England to fight for its very existence. This is the story of how the Vikings nearly brought England to its knees. Everything began in the year 793. On the quiet island of Lindisfarne stood one of England's most sacred monasteries. The monks believed they were protected by God. There were no walls, no soldiers, and no reason to expect danger. Then strange ships appeared from the sea. Warriors rushed ashore with terrifying speed. They showed no mercy. The monastery was looted. Priceless treasures disappeared, and the surviving monks watched their peaceful world collapse in a single morning. News of the attack spread across Europe like wildfire. People believed the end of the world had begun, but for the Vikings, it was only the beginning. More fleets followed. Every year they returned, striking villages, churches, and trading towns before disappearing back into the sea. English kings struggled to stop them because the Vikings never stayed long enough to be caught. They attacked where defenses were weakest, vanished before armies arrived, and left behind only smoke and fear. Yet the greatest mistake England made was believing these were nothing more than pirates. Around 865, everything changed. Instead of small raiding parties, an enormous Viking force landed on English soil. Historians would later call it the Great Heathen Army. These men had not crossed the sea to steal silver and sail home. They had come to claim England itself. Among their leaders were warriors believed to be the sons of the legendary Ragnar Lothbrok. According to Norse tradition, Ragnar had been executed by King Ella of Northumbria, and now his sons wanted revenge. Whether the legend was completely true hardly mattered. The Vikings believed it, and that belief fueled one of the greatest invasions Britain had ever seen. Their first target was Northumbria, already weakened by a civil war between rival kings. While the English fought each other, the Vikings captured the great city of York. Desperate to reclaim it, the rival kings finally united, but they acted too late. The battle ended in disaster. Both kings were killed. York remained in Viking hands, and one of England's strongest kingdoms disappeared almost overnight. Fear spread across the country. If Northumbria could fall so quickly, who would be next? The answer came almost immediately. East Anglia stood little chance against an experienced Viking army. King Edmund refused to surrender and fought until he was captured. According to medieval accounts, he was executed after refusing to abandon his faith, becoming one of England's most famous martyrs. Another kingdom was gone. The Vikings continued south without slowing down. Mercia, once the most powerful kingdom in England, collapsed under constant pressure. Its ruler fled into exile, while Viking banners rose above town after town. In only a few years, nearly all of England lay under Viking control. Only one kingdom still resisted, Wessex. And one young king would soon discover that the survival of England depended entirely on him. Part 2. That young king was Alfred. He was not the strongest warrior in England, nor did he command the largest army. What made him different was that he understood something every other ruler had failed to see. The Vikings could not be defeated by chasing them from one battlefield to another. They had to be outsmarted. But before Alfred had the chance to change England, he came dangerously close to losing everything. In the winter of 878, the Viking leader Guthrum launched a surprise attack on the royal stronghold at Chippenham during a Christian festival. Alfred barely escaped with his life. Wessex collapsed into chaos. Towns surrendered, and many believed England's final kingdom had fallen. Hiding in the marshes of Somerset, with only a handful of loyal followers, Alfred watched as the Vikings celebrated what they thought was their greatest victory. They believed the war was over. They were wrong. Secretly, Alfred sent messengers across Wessex, calling every nobleman, farmer, and warrior still willing to fight. Week by week, small groups gathered until a new army stood beside him. It was not the largest force England had ever raised, but it was united by one purpose. If they lost, England would disappear forever. The two armies met at the Battle of Edington. The fighting was brutal. Shield walls crashed together. Axes split shields, and neither side gave ground easily. For hours the outcome remained uncertain, but slowly the English line pushed forward. For the first time in years, it was the Vikings who began to retreat. Guthrum's army fled into a nearby fortress, where Alfred surrounded them and refused to let anyone escape. Hunger soon accomplished what swords could not. With no hope of rescue, Guthrum surrendered. The victory saved Wessex, but Alfred knew one battle would never end the Viking threat. Instead of celebrating, he began preparing for the next invasion. His solution changed English history forever. Across Wessex, he ordered the construction of heavily defended towns known as burhs. No matter where Vikings landed, they would now face strong walls and organized defenders instead of frightened villages. Alfred also reorganized his army so that one group of soldiers remained on duty while another returned home to work the farms, ensuring England could fight year-round without starving. Most importantly, he began building ships designed to challenge Viking longships at sea. It was the beginning of what many historians consider the first English navy. Little by little, the balance of power began to shift. The Vikings were still dangerous, but they no longer found easy victories. Every raid became more difficult, every siege more expensive, and every battle more uncertain. England had finally learned how to fight back. Part 3. Although Alfred had saved Wessex, he had not saved all of England. A huge part of the country remained under Viking rule. This region became known as the Danelaw, where Norse laws, customs, and traditions replaced those of the Anglo-Saxons. Viking settlers built farms, established markets, married local people, and turned what had once been conquered territory into their new home. England was now divided between two worlds. Many believed this division would last forever, but Alfred had a different vision. He dreamed of one united England, free from constant invasion. He spent the rest of his life strengthening his kingdom, repairing roads, rebuilding towns, encouraging education, and preparing the next generation for the battles still to come. When Alfred died in 899, the Vikings still controlled much of the country, but they no longer seemed invincible. His son Edward the Elder, and later his grandson Ethelstan, continued his work. Year after year, they captured Viking fortresses, reclaimed lost cities, and forced one Danish ruler after another to surrender. The struggle lasted for decades, But the result slowly became clear. The kingdoms that had once fallen, one after another, were being united under a single English crown. By the middle of the 10th century, England had become stronger than it had ever been before. Ironically, the Viking invasion that almost destroyed the country also helped create a united kingdom. Without the threat from Scandinavia, the separate Anglo-Saxon kingdoms might never have joined together. Even after the wars ended, the Vikings left a permanent mark on England. Hundreds of English towns still carry Norse names. Thousands of English words have Viking origins. Trade expanded, cultures mixed, and generations of English people carried Scandinavian blood without even realizing it. The Vikings did not simply invade England. They reshaped it forever. So, did the Vikings bring England to its knees? For a moment, yes. They destroyed kingdoms, executed kings, conquered vast territories, and pushed the last free English kingdom to the edge of collapse. But they never achieved complete victory. One determined ruler refused to surrender, and his decisions changed the course of history. If Alfred had been captured in the marshes of Somerset, England, as we know it, might never have existed. Instead, the kingdom survived, adapted, and eventually became powerful enough to drive the Vikings back. The greatest victory was not won by the strongest army, but by the side that learned from defeat, changed its strategy, and refused to give up. And that is why the Viking invasion remains one of the most important turning points in the history of England.